One afternoon, U.S. infrared satellites detect hot plume from Russian ballistic missiles. Satellites instantly transmit the detection data to early warning teams at NORAD, STRATCOM, and the National Military Command Center. America is under attack. By the time the president is notified, key officials from the Department of Defense have approximately 1 minute to brief the president. That group includes the Pentagon's Deputy Director of Operations, the point of contact between the Office of Military Commissions and other United States military and civilian agencies, and the head of U.S. Strategic Command, responsible for strategic nuclear defense of the United States. Anyone else in the group is at the president's discretion. Some of the advisors may try to change the president's mind, or resign in protest, but ultimately the Pentagon must do whatever the commander-in-chief orders. That meeting with advisors can be as short as 30 seconds. During the meeting, the head of U.S. Strategic Command located at the National Military Command Center in the Pentagon would inform the president that NORAD's early warning satellites detected a massive launch within the Russian Federation. 400 intercontinental ballistic missiles are currently heading toward the U.S. mainland and will be hitting their targets in 20 minutes. But if you want to put yourself in the president of the United States' shoes, NORAD's ballistic missile early warning system is currently tracking hundreds of missiles in mid-flight. Primary targets include the U.S.'s entire ICBM force, America's strategic bombers, and key military facilities. The Pentagon's Deputy Director of Operations would remind the president that if they didn't make a decision within 15 minutes, the United States would lose over half of its nuclear forces, severely limiting America's ability to launch a retaliatory strike. Given this information and advice, the President of the United States decides to launch a retaliatory strike, and the nuclear football is opened. Used to authorize a nuclear attack while away from fixed command centers, like the White House Situation Room or the President's Emergency Operations Center. The President's nuclear football is carried by a military aide when the President is traveling. Wherever a U.S. President goes, the nuclear football follows. Inside the football are the following: a black folder containing the United States' nuclear attack options, the Biscuit, a 3x5-inch card with authorization codes, and a secure communication system known as MILSTAR, used to communicate launch orders. Inside the black folder are menu of strike options, including major attack options, selected attack options, and limited attack options, which could range from the launch of a single cruise missile to that of hundreds of ICBMs. Individual countries or regions can be included or withheld from nuclear attacks depending on the circumstances. Given the scale of the attack and the possibility of losing its ICBMs and bombers, the president selects Major Attack Option 1, America's largest attack option consisting of over 1,200 warheads. The president has about 6 minutes to confer with his advisors and decide which attack option to retaliate with. With hundreds of nuclear missiles re-entering the Earth's atmosphere, the president gives the order to launch. But before the Pentagon can prepare the launch order, it must verify that the person ordering the strike is indeed the president. This is done using gold codes. Gold codes are the nuclear launch codes provided to the president in the role as commander-in-chief of the armed forces. In conjunction with the nuclear football, gold codes allow the president to authorize a nuclear strike. Gold codes are arranged in a column and printed on the biscuit. The biscuit's size is similar to that of a credit card, and the president carries it on their person at all times. Before it can be read, an opaque plastic covering must be snapped in two and removed. To verify the president's identity, an officer in the Pentagon's war room reads what's known as a challenge code. For example, Delta Romeo. Using the biscuit, the president finds the matching response to the challenge code. For example, Tango November. Once the launch codes match, the launch order goes out. This entire process can take up to a minute. Once the launch order is verified, the war room prepares an emergency action message containing the war plan, time of launch, authentication codes, and the codes needed to unlock the missiles before firing them. That message is only about 150 characters long, less than the length of a tweet. It's encoded, encrypted, and broadcast to launch crews. For command centers, the White House and National Military Command Center and the Pentagon issued nuclear launch orders, which are then carried out by STRATCOM at Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska, NORAD located at Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado, and Global Strike Command headquartered at Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana. Within seconds, submarine and ICBM crews in various underground bunkers received the launch orders. At this point, only about 2 to 3 minutes have passed since the initial conference call. America's Minuteman III silos are based in 3 rural areas: the 90th Missile Wing at F.E. Warren Air Base in Colorado, Nebraska, and Wyoming, the 91st Missile Wing at Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota, and the 341st Missile Wing at Maelstrom Air Force Base in Montana. Each wing has 3 squadrons, and each squadron has 50 Minuteman III silos. They're collectively controlled by 5 hardened underground control launch centers, each operated with 2 military officers around the clock at all times. Each launch control center can launch 10 Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missiles. Each missile carries a 330 kiloton or 300 kiloton thermonuclear warhead, containing 40 times the destructive power of the bombs dropped on Hiroshima. Once the launch command is given, the Launch Control Center hears an alarm, and then receives a coded message over the loudspeakers giving the command to launch. Both officers must agree that the message is valid by comparing the authorization code and the order against their sealed authentication system codes, a special sealed envelope containing the authentication codes. These sealed authenticators are stored in a safe which has 2 separate locks. Each officer has a key to only one lock, so neither can open the safe alone. As the commander calls out the codes to verify the launch message, the deputy commander repeats them. If the codes match, the crews enter the war plan into their launch computers. Crew members don't know where or which targets will be hit by the missiles that they'll launch, just the war plan. They then unlock a small red steel emergency war order safe. Inside the safe are 2 launch keys. After the crew members receive their keys, they then strap into their chairs in the case of a nuclear strike on the launch facility. They then insert the keys into their consoles to begin the final countdown. Finally, the crewmen turn their keys simultaneously, launching their missiles. No single person can turn both keys because they're 12 feet apart. Instantly, a launch in progress display lights up. Explosive gas generators open massive concrete doors above the silos, and the Minuteman III missiles lift off. A missile away indicator lights up for each Minuteman III missile launched. Outside the Minuteman facility, a missile crew in another launch control center must do the same for the missiles to be launched. It only takes 2 crews to launch, so 3 can refuse to do any of the prior steps and all 50 missiles will still launch. The same goes for the remaining 8 squadrons. Over a period of 5 minutes, all 400 ICBMs fire out of their silos during their pre-programmed flyout salvo. Each missile will reach their targets on the other side of the world in 30 minutes. In the event that launch control centers are destroyed in a surprise attack, or the military officers inhabiting the launch command control centers get cold feet, these missiles can and will be remotely launched from an airborne command center, carrying out orders from the president. On 10 Ohio-class submarines located somewhere in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, the Pentagon's emergency action message is received authorizing the launch of nuclear weapons. On each submarine, the emergency action message is decoded and verified by the commanding officer and the executive officer. Failure of verification by either officer prevents a launch. Neither the commanding officer nor the executive officer can be relieved of command under any circumstances if they determine that the launch order is invalid, nor can they be compelled to support a launch. Once the captain and the executive officer agree that the launch order is indeed valid, they then authorize the launch with their operations personnel. A third officer, the weapons officer, also confirms the launch, and the 560-foot submarine begins to rise to its launch depth of 200 feet. The captain then gives the weapons officer 20 launch tube gas generator keys. Each key activates one of the submarine's 20 Trident II submarine launch ballistic missile launch tubes, allowing them to launch. The single most destructive weapon in America's nuclear arsenal, the Trident II SLBM is armed with either 4 or 5 475 kiloton W-88 warheads. Just one Trident II missile alone, armed with 5 warheads, has 154 times the destructive power of the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. The captain is then given his attack center indicator panel key to enable the launch of nuclear weapons. Turning off this key stops the launch at any point in the procedure, while the launch officer and his technicians prepare to launch the weapons. The weapons officer unlocks a firing trigger from a combination lock safe near the operator console. All launch keys are stored in combination safes. Nobody on board has the combination to open these safes, and the combination codes come as part of the launch order. At this point, all 400 intercontinental ballistic missiles have been launched, and incoming Russian warheads begin detonating on the continental US. 15 minutes later, the submarine reaches its launch depth of 200 feet, and the weapons officer squeezes the firing trigger, launching the first weapon. Another squeeze a very short time later launches the next missile, one missile every 15 seconds, until the launch package is completed. Once fired, a missile and its warhead cannot be called back.